Hey, what's going on, world? It's Patrick Lovell coming at you January 11th, 2023 at about 9 a.m. my time. And just a quick truth bomb today. Yesterday, the day before that, the insurrection in Brazil, all of the kind of zaniness that's happening in Congress based on, obviously the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, 14 different votes, and of course, George Santos, the living embodiment of the talented Mr. Ripley meets George Costanza. Meanwhile, media, particularly mainstream media, I get a kick out of like watching, for example, Alex Wagner. I think Alex Wagner is just such a cute tart. She's just this thoughtful, lovely, really smart, kind of like, wow, I can really figure things out. Maybe sorority sister. She's the type of person who made a lot of probably great grades, probably went to the perfect university, probably came from the perfect family. And she literally has no idea how the world works. She gets paid, who knows how much she gets paid, but she gets paid probably quite a bit to ask the most befuddling, stupid questions I've ever seen in my life in context to what she doesn't understand. And look, it's just, you know what you know, right? It's not that she's dumb. She's not even remotely dumb. She's probably much smarter than I am, quite frankly. But it's what you feed your head with. I remember seeing this meme on Facebook some time ago where you are, the animal you feed sort of thing, right? And in the case of mainstream media, whether it's, like Alex Wagner, who's kind of replacing, of course, Rachel Maddow, who is a different story. Rachel Maddow is experienced. She's very smart, she's very capable, and she cherry picks. She's the director of communications for the Democratic Party, which would be the meritocracy Democratic Party, which is the Wall Street hybrid Democratic Party, which is the funding, and everybody does it the right way, which means she cherry picks, which means she's dishonest, and she's just somebody who picks a lane. And a lot of people are like, you know what, wait, this is the way the world works, right? You've got Tucker Carlson, you've got the right, you've got Fox. She's going to have to, basically counter that sort of thing. No, it's just fucking bullshit. It's all bullshit. Same with Anderson Cooper. I like to call him Zoolander. I mean that incredibly disparagingly because nobody drives me more nuts than Anderson Cooper in the mainstream. But the reason I bring these guys up is because everybody is like, what the hell is going on with this right-wing, sort of autocratic global movement, and how is it possible? And I watched a couple of features from Rachel Maddow, for example, where she interviews this, fantastic scholar from Yale University, PhD, and I guess all sorts of, specificity as it relates to global upheaval and autocratic movements and that sort of thing. And everything he described is what exactly I've been trying to tell you, right? But she can't see the forest for the trees. In fact, he ends the interview by saying, look, if you don't hold executives accountable, it's a slow motion train wreck that will create this situation. Translation, corruption births fascism. That's what I'm telling you. All right? The autocratic movement didn't just happen. It's been pretty much on the frickin' storm front since 2016. And the way I interpret it is the way it's always been. These guys have always been out there, right? They've just gotten a lot better with their organization because they're more vertical, because they've got a lot more support from billionaires, because the mainstream media isn't asking questions about them. They just want to focus on guys like Trump, and Trump is no mastermind. He's just somebody who dances between the frickin' raindrops because he can read the tea leaves like nobody else can, quite frankly. If he has a superpower, it's that. He's the Joker, straight out of Gotham, right? But getting back to Rachel Maddow and her disingenuous sort of narrative, and it drives me absolutely insane because she gets $30 million a year to do it, which is to make sure that you don't understand how the power works. And that's what I've been laying on you for some time. And I've observed this from Rachel Maddow for the last decade, okay? And what is the power? For example, let me kind of backtrack through this sort of scenario, right? So, actually, I didn't finish my thought about the autocratic movements. I mean, there's the tough guys have always been out there, right? The white supremacists, the far right, that sort of thing. They've always been there, and they always preyed upon people that didn't fit in elsewhere. And, it's easy to kind of create this homogeneous movement and patriarchal, vertical top down based on get in line and do what we tell you and don't ask any questions and everything will be fine. And that's really easy to prey upon people who don't have a lot of self-worth or identity and know how to meander through this kind of complicated world. So they become, conformist, right? That's the way it works in humanity. We're basically tribal by nature, okay? I mean, I could tell you literally everything about the rise of Hitler in the Reich, and you start to see these things, around our society. And I've always been extremely, cognizant of it. But like, for example, when people try to compare Hitler or Trump to Hitler, I was like, that was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. Trump is no fucking Hitler. Could you imagine Trump running from trench to trench in World War I, getting nuked with mustard gas and being able to survive that? No, Trump is a rich boy, man, born on third base. The guy does, gets everybody to, play his game the way he wants to play it. He wants to manipulate everybody. At best, if you're going to compare him to a historical figure, it might be Mussolini, quite frankly. Got a lot of parallels to Mussolini, and Mussolini was the father of fascism, okay? It's the convergence of the corporate fascist state that's far right. Okay, it's corporations working under the state, basically the capacity and the labor and everything else is all under one, centrifugal force, which is the far right state. The state's above all else. And, Trump kind of plays that game. But do you think that Trump would ever put the state above Trump? That's fucking ridiculous. Trump is all things Trump in every second of every single day. And I mean, I have to hand it to the guy. He just makes me smile when I think of his buffoonery. That's not even a word. I mean, he's a buffoon, but at the same time, he's like, Jesus, he's still walking through the freaking raindrops. And so this brings me to really the convergence of what I was trying to say. So of what the point of this truth bomb is that while mainstream media, particularly these thoughtful, delightful, smart, capable women who fancy themselves powerhouses, who absolutely have no idea how the system works, and that's not Rachel Maddow. I'm talking Alex Wagner and her crew. Rachel Maddow, she knows how this thing works, and she's at the apex of it. And, if I ever have a chance to be a guest on one of Rachel's podcasts or go toe-to-toe with her, boy, am I going to have fun pointing out to her what I know she missed this whole time. And put her on the defensive, because that woman needs to be interviewed for how she's decided to maneuver certain stories in specific ways and ignore others. I mean, quite frankly, she's not entertainment. She fancies herself, or they position herself as a real journalist and the anchor of the network and so on and so forth. And she should be held responsible for that. Because when you get to this scenario where the mainstream asks, how is it possible that we're going through this insane autonomous movement around the world as if it just happened? No, it didn't just happen. It's been on the march for a long time, because the centrifugal force of that movement is the age-old libertarians coke with the billionaires who just want everything for themselves, and they basically want to try to pull a coup d'etat for themselves, and they have since the 70s, quite frankly. And they're, obviously, foundation is oil and gas, and they, created their global wealth because of ultimately Dad created the infrastructure for Stalin. There's a nice fusion for you. Libertarian capitalism and communism. What's that tell you? In the end, it's just about absolute power. It has nothing to do with fucking economic ideology, okay? It has to do with control and power. So ultimately, this situation as it relates to, this Yale professor who was a guest on Rachel Maddow's program, and she's asking him, well, how do we get to tyranny? And she starts to ignore exactly what the guy's saying, and what he's saying is exactly right. If you don't have accountability to executives in the system, then it's a slow train wreck to this scenario that we have, where there's these autocratic movements that are going to try to overthrow democracy because they consider democracy weak. Democracy shouldn't be weak if it had integrity of the law. And that's the whole point of this, what this guy was saying from Yale. He's saying the law has to have integrity. But when the law doesn't have integrity, you have corruption. And so what I've been trying to tell you, and I've been telling you over and over and over, and I'm the only guy in the country that's actually telling you this, is that A, corruption births fascism, and the real coup d'etat happened in 2009 when Wall Street bankrupted the fucking world, and the Federal Reserve gave them tens of trillions of dollars illegally while the media covered for it. That's it. That's the devil in the shadows, okay? Now, they played a pretty complex fucking spectrum, and I'll give you another example of their criminality versus the criminality of the world of crypto and Bitcoin and that sort of thing, right? So over the holiday, I'm watching basketball, and I know that Mark Cuban, the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, was into Bitcoin, and I see advertised on his, during the Dallas Mavericks game, Coinbase. Well, as it turns out, Coinbase is laying off like 20% of its workforce, and from what I understand, because I'm looking into this, because I'm doing a new project on FTX, is that the whole mishigas of the culture of Bitcoin and crypto and so on and so forth, now including Binance, which is bleeding money like freaking crazy, which is another sign that thing could go upside down. But it's just pimps and whores, okay? And junkies, pimps, whores, and junkies, right? And the only difference, because you might say, well, wait a second, what's the difference between all these guys hustling Bitcoin and all this bullshit product and all this other fucking crap with, all of these celebrities, pimping it out? You've been telling us about Wall Street corruption the whole time. Aren't they the same thing? No, because Wall Street owns the fucking system. Because Wall Street's incredibly smart, incredibly sophisticated and diabolical. They bought the goddamn Supreme Court alongside the right, but the corporate system bought the Supreme Court, and then they made a deal with making it okay. Like we're gonna put corporations above people, and then ultimately we're gonna make this deal where we tell the people that we're gonna give them things like those that are most hive oriented, like no abortion and states' rights, and libertarian ideals and that sort of thing. So it's the minority rule. Okay, that's what corporations do. That's what a corporate fascist system does. And then you throw Wall Street in with the control, fraud, and Gresham's dynamic and all of the other things that will show you time and again that these idiots who get paid millions upon millions of dollars that are between Tucker Carlson, Anderson Cooper, and Alex Wagner and everybody else. I do like Lawrence O'Donnell, but for a different level. I think he asks incredibly smart questions to legal experts like Lawrence Tribe. That's another story. He's a very capable guy in that meander, and no disrespect towards him from there, even though ideologically he kind of sounds like these guys a little bit. That's the whole idea of the platform. But it's all bullshit. Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story. I went to MSNBC, I think it was in 2009. I went to go pitch this concept that I had called The Future is Green, because I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm also, a progressive, and I'm also a guy that's like rising tide raises all ships. I'm not anywhere close to communist or socialism. I'm somewhere between this hybrid between Jefferson and Lincoln and Teddy Roosevelt and FDR and Martin Luther King, or my ideology that makes me who I am, liberty and justice for all, and the integrity of law and Brandeis and that sort of thing. So very American, but that side of the equation of the Americanism, right? And ultimately, the scenario with, I think it's just important to express that, because it's going to become this battle, really, where capitalism becomes the enemy for so many. And again, like I try to tell everybody, capitalism is a tool. It's like fire. You can create heat and warmth, or it could burn the house down. And speaking of burning the house down and everything else, the people out there that look around and they see this like incredibly volatile weather and winter and everything else, and they think to themselves, "Oh my God, there's no such thing as climate change and global warming." That's the same thing as these high-paid morons in these sort of ivory towers that are like, we have to have, what separates us from these autocratic nations is the integrity of law, right? And that nobody is above the law, and that everybody is accountable to law. And because, look, Trump has had an insurrection. Look, this whole thing about what's going on in the House right now is that they're trying to turn the tables and go after the IRS and go after the Republicans, go after the IRS, go after the intelligence agencies because they're going after their boy Trump. Again, Trump's above the state, by the way. And it's kind of a brilliant dance, in the most stupid way. Like I said, this guy, George Santos, they're not going to purge him because they need his vote. But this guy created a whole, campaign based on fraud. He's a talented Mr. Ripley because apparently he's this, this bisexual dude who's full of shit. And he's in the House of Representatives. It's a race to the bottom. I thank the Republicans, because no matter what I've done in my life, and I've done some stupid stuff in my life, it would never come even remotely close to the stuff that's on display every single day. And so going back to this climate change, buffoonery for people who look out and they see this crazy weather in California, and they see, all the snow for the past 4 or 5 weeks, throughout the eastern seaboard, and the stuff that happened in like places like Buffalo, and really the calamity of this whole thing, and the just tumultuous weather patterns. And they think to themselves, there's no climate change. There's no global warming. Because they don't have a fucking clue how it works. And the polar vortex and different, pressure systems based on the polar ice caps melting and cause and effect. They don't understand science, let alone do they understand history, or they understand geopolitics, or they understand the law. And so then you have these high-paid idiots, useful idiots in media that don't have a fucking clue how the system works. They couldn't rub two sticks together when it comes to control fraud, or quite frankly, fishing for fools, except that's what they do every day just because they're fucking idiots, man. And that's why I call Anderson Cooper Zoolander. It's not funny, man. In history, what this leads to is just massive upheaval and death and destruction. And it's so unnecessary. But then again, maybe it is necessary. I don't know. People learn their lessons through pain and suffering. I don't know. I've been suffering so much because I've been pressing so hard. My life is not very easy. I'm pressing so hard and pushing this boulder up the hill backwards without shoes on my feet, trying to climb Everest. I mean, that's what this feels like. The weight on my back, trying to make you understand the nature of corruption in today's, high octane, high information. Everybody's coming at you left and right, and everybody's reacting to each other. And you can't see the forest through the trees because you can't get the bandwidth to actually study the stuff to understand A plus B equals C. And, yet everybody in the world is impacted by this. I hate corruption. I hate fascism. I'm for liberty and justice for all, and democracy and the integrity of law. And I know how to make it work where it's a muscular Popeye, who opens up his can of spinach to open up a can of whoop ass on Bluto, who's fucking corruption. I don't know how much easier I can spell this out for you. Guys, we've got to move, and we've got to move fast, and we've got to be able to build a movement of tens of millions of people who understand the truth, the facts of what it is that we reveal in the con. And I've got so much more, and I'm putting together a lot of deals that are going to land nationally and bring in a lot of attention because I'm dealing with some important people. But at the long and the short of it is, we need you. We need millions of you. We need millions of people to know the name Patrick Lovell, not because I fancy myself, Mussolini, just the opposite. I'm the antithesis of Mussolini. Like I said, I'm FDR, to Lincoln, to really, I've had a lot of people compare me to General. Oh God, why can't I think of the most important general's name during the Civil War? Anyway, my mind's swimming with a bunch of stuff. It'll come to me before I sign off in here. But through FDR and Teddy Roosevelt and FDR, and ultimately, yeah, definitely I'd put Kennedy in there. And NASA, okay, productive, strong, victorious. We can use this engine to work for the USS Enterprise versus the USS Titanic. And that's what corruption's done. And we've already hit the iceberg. So if the calamity comes, in this particular situation where the fuse has already been lit and there's already a big press towards autocracy, what do you think is going to happen when tens of millions of people go under like they did during 2008? And I think that's coming. And I actually think it's, if you look at the layoffs between all the tech companies, I think, we saw, Twitter lay off a whole bunch of people, obviously, which is really surmises the whole thing, encapsulates the whole thing. And then we had all of the scenarios like all the tech companies. Apple laid off a bunch of people. Actually, we didn't hear so much about Apple laying off people. Look, all of the tumultuous situation in the crypto and the Bitcoin industries, call them whatever they are. I mean, they're just pump and dump fraud schemes. And then ultimately, tech. Oh, I was trying to think about Meta. Couldn't get my head around Meta, Facebook. We live in the most ridiculously stupid times considering how much potential we have. We have so many freaking massive problems starting with climate change. And we have the tools, and we have the knowledge, and we have the technology. It sounds like I'm doing a promo for the $1 Million Man back in the 70s, to refix this machine. Honestly, that's what I'm trying to do. I want to build a new productive economy, and the economy built on the technology to foster in, the great paradigm reboot. I mean, the right calls it a reset. I'm calling it, yes, we got to do a reboot, a reset of the last 40 years, because this is, I'll finish with this. Neoliberalism over the course of the last 40 years, 50 years, basically created this situation of globalism where you've got cheap goods manufactured in Asia. You've got most of our energy coming from the OPEC nations. You basically create all this global trade dependent on fossil fuel that makes your dollar the global reserve currency. And then ultimately what Wall Street did was, look, the big money, now that all of that's been, nailed down, the big money comes from mergers and acquisitions. It comes from feeding the kitty on the military industrial complex, and then also the financial engineering and the financialization, which is fraud, right? It's short term. It's short term profits, which are mythical profits built on a fucking system that doesn't make sense. It's like, honestly, it's like putting a guy, on tons of fucking steroids. And, he goes to compete in this, world bodybuilding championship. And then suddenly one day he just seizes up of a heart attack. Taking a shit ton of steroids doesn't make you healthy. You might look strong as fuck, but you're not healthy. And the same goes for all of these other things. They're counterintuitive. You got to understand how things work. Please check out The Con at www.thecon.tv. Check out Patrick Lovell Truth Bombs The Con. If you go to the live category and you see the 11-1-22 Deception Owns You filibuster, that's got the truth that overturns this whole thing. I'm holding the largest truth in the history of the world. Well, at least the last 70 years. This system works because it works for the tiny few at the expense of everybody else, and that's what creates this situation. And for those of you that think you're comfortable, you're in for a rude awakening. You've got another thing coming. For the rest of you who are heroes, who believe in Superman and the League of Justice and good guys overwhelming bad guys and Bugs Bunny and What's Up, Doc? I'm your guy. Seriously. Can we work together to try to create a revolution of common sense? Maybe that's what this is, a revolution of common sense to purge corruption. Onwards and upwards.